We're only 4 weeks into the new year, and I've already watched something really interesting play out. Brilliant experts with massive audiences are struggling to sell even a $500 offer. And yet, newer, smaller creators are closing $10,000 clients. Now, this is something that we should all be paying attention to because it tells us something significant is changing in a way that we monetize and sell our expertise in 2026. Now, before I unpack what's actually happening, it's also worth acknowledging something that makes this even more puzzling, which is the training and coaching industry is actually booming right now. It's projected to surpass $1 trillion by the end of 2026, which should mean that making money from your expertise is getting easier. But that's not true. It's actually getting harder for a lot of people. And the reason isn't just because noise is at all-time high and the market is really, really saturated. Both of those are very true and very real. But the deeper change, the deeper shift is that the way people decide who to trust and who to buy from has fundamentally changed. But unfortunately, most of the marketing advice that's circulating right now online hasn't really caught up to that reality. So in this video, I want to unpack what's actually driving this divide and what that means for anyone selling their expertise in 2026. Now, when we zoom out, we can see six major changes that's shaping what's happening right now. And collectively, together, they explain why some experts are thriving right now, while others, even though they are seasoned, they have more experience, they have social proof, struggling really, really hard. Let's start with the first one. Building trust right now matters more than increasing your visibility or reach. What I mean by that is for a long time, visibility acted like a shortcut. If someone saw you often enough on their social media feeds, on multiple platforms, in their inbox, that repetition created familiarity. And normally, familiarity leads to trust, and trust often leads to buying. That dynamic has completely changed. Over the last few years, content volume has exploded, right? Between AI tools, automations, and short term platforms like YouTube Shorts and TikTok, people right now are exposed to more ideas, advice, and opinion in a single day than they used to see in an entire month. So, right now, attention is no longer the constraint. What's constrained right now is something else entirely. People are far more selective about who they listen to and who they're willing to invest with because we're dealing with a much more informed, more selective, and more educated market. This is why visibility on its own no longer does the job that people expect it to do. Now, visibility can make people aware of you. It can even spark interest, but it doesn't automatically create trust. And trust right now in this market is what buying decisions are built on. And unfortunately, this is a part that keeps a lot of smart and capable people busy, thinking that they're gaining ground, but in reality, they're actually marching in place. They assume that if someone is watching them or listening or following them, they must be getting closer to buying. But being seen isn't the same as being chosen. You can be visible without being trusted. And that distinction matters now more than ever because in today's market, your audience, they're not asking whether or not you're knowledgeable or you know your stuff. They're actually comparing you to many, many, many other options and solutions and experts and asking whether you're the right guide for them, whether you get their specific situation, or whether you're going to deliver what you're promising. And those questions don't get answered through reach or visibility alone. They get answered through what happens after someone starts paying attention to you. Once visibility has done its job, once someone notices you, every interaction after that should carry more weight. Every piece of content, every email, every video, every touch point that someone has with you and your content is either helping that person feel clearer about how you think, what you stand for, and whether you're the right person for them, or it's leaving them unsure. And what do people do when they're not sure? They wait, they hesitate, they don't move forward, or they move on to someone else who's going to get to that clarity much faster. So, in 2026, the role of visibility has changed. Visibility will open doors for you, but trust is what determines whether someone will walk through it. Now, let's move on to shift number two, which is valuable content alone doesn't lead to enrollments. In 2026, the biggest misunderstanding in online marketing is about the role of your content. Most people think that content means teaching or providing value. If I give away my best stuff, if I show people that I'm knowledgeable, that I know my stuff, then that will lead to enrollment. But today, people don't buy because they learn something from you. They buy because they see themselves in the way that you're describing the problem. That now they understand the deeper root cause that they're stuck, that they believe your approach makes sense for them, that they trust that you're the right guide for them. Valuable and educational content checks none of those boxes by default. That's why purely educational creators often end up with high engagement but low conversion. They end up with lots of fans and followers but a few buyers. No matter which market or industry you're in, and no matter what your solution is, your audience right now isn't lacking information. What they're lacking is clarity about their own situation. So, when you make sure that your content isn't just about giving value or information, but a 360 viewpoint into their own situation, you're giving them insight, you're giving them clarity that almost no one right now in your industry is giving them. And that's transformational. When you do this well, over and over and over consistently, an interesting thing happens. They don't need to be convinced that you're the right person. They're going to show up at your doorstep asking how they can work with you. So that was the second shift. Valuable content doesn't lead to enrollment, which goes hand in hand with the third major change that we're seeing right now, which is people will buy perspective, not just expertise. Now, a few years ago, expertise was the differentiator. Teach me how to do stuff was the game changer. But given that today information is everywhere, not only right now you can Google it or go to YouTube to get answers to your questions, now on top of that, AI can not only explain it to you, but it can customize it and guide you through it step by step. That means expertise isn't scarce anymore. What people actually value right now is your perspective. And here's a difference between perspective and experience, in case you're wondering. Expertise tells your audience what to do and how to do it. Perspective, on the other hand, helps them understand why it matters to their specific situation and how to interpret it to fit their own unique needs and what to prioritize and what to ignore and how it fits into their bigger vision and the bigger future that they're envisioning. And this matters because if you look at most buyers in almost any niche or industry right now, they're not stuck because they lack information. They're stuck because they don't know which advice directly applies to their specific situation. And they don't know why all the stuff that they've tried, all their previous attempts hasn't worked up to now. They don't know what to not do and what things they should be paying attention to. They don't know who to believe or what approach is going to work for them. None of those are information gaps. They're translation gaps. And translation happens when you bring your perspective into the conversation. When you do that, when you give someone your perspective, you're doing something extremely valuable for them. You're helping them make sense of their own situation and you help them see the patterns, all the invisible loops that they're caught in, all the symptoms that is actually causing the problem that they're in right now. You help them diagnose the real issues instead of fixing the surface level ones that everybody else is shouting at them and saying, fix this or fix that. You help them understand why all the obvious solutions that's in front of them hasn't worked up to now and what to do next. Expertise can't do any of that. Now, here's another interesting and important piece when it comes to perspective, which is perspective converts. And the reason is because when we share our expertise, in a lot of ways, we're educating people with here's how to do X, or here are your next 5 steps to get to that desired outcome. So if you think about it, when we share our expertise, it gives people a false sense of confidence that now they know how to move forward. Follow these 5 steps that you just educated them on, and they're going to reach their desired outcome. But when we share our expertise, we're doing something totally different. We're diagnosing why all the other 5 step formulas hasn't worked for them and what would work given their specific situation. And that's exactly why perspective converts, because it doesn't just hand people a cure without context. It helps them understand why your recommended path forward makes sense for their specific situation. Now, if perspective is what actually helps people decide and to buy, then it changes how we need to think about the path that those people need to take, your buyers should take to get them there. Which brings us to the next major shift. Shift number 4, funnels will become non-linear. So let's talk about that. Traditional funnels were built on the simple idea that first someone sees you, then they opt in, and then they read a bunch of your emails, and then eventually they buy. But that assumes that life is linear. However, in 2026, buying behavior is nothing like that. It's actually very messy, it's very chaotic. There's no order whatsoever to it. Let me give you a real example from my own life. I came across someone in the personal development space on YouTube. I loved what he was saying and what he was sharing so much that I ended up binge watching 3 of his videos in one sitting. And then I went on to check out his program, but I didn't buy. However, I did opt into his funnel and grab one of his resources. Now, I had every intention of going through it, but life got in the way, and eventually I totally forgot about him, even though I did see some of his emails landing in my inbox. Months went on, and one night I saw one of his short videos on YouTube, and I ended up binge watching some more videos, and then I went on and checked out his membership, but I didn't buy from him, and I forgot all about him again. Another 4 months went by, and one of my friends mentioned that she was attending an event that she thought I should go to as well. And of course, it was an event by him. So I was like, oh my gosh, I know this guy. So I attended his event. He did promote his membership at the end of the event, but I still didn't buy. Another 2 months went by, and I saw an interview of him on a podcast. And it was then that I decided to join his community. And that's exactly what's happening to your audience right now. And part of the reason is we have so much coming at us right now that we're all doing this like zigzag thing rather than going down this neat, straight, and linear path. At this point in time, platforms are deciding the order in which people see you or consume your content. And algorithms are the ones that are deciding the entry point and the exit point. And of course, buyers are the ones who are deciding the pace in which they interact and consume your content. So then that brings this question of if we can't control the order, then what can we control? And the answer is coherence. Your videos, your posts, your podcasts, your emails, they should all reinforce the same message, the same viewpoint, and the same through line. So no matter when someone enters, they're getting a consistent picture of who you are, how you think, and whether working with you makes sense to them. Every touch point that they have with you and your content isn't just information exchange, it's an experience. And those experiences should stack up. As someone moves through each of those experiences, they should start feeling more aligned with you, more connected to your perspective, and more confident that choosing you is the right move forward. And when that happens, decision making actually speeds up. I see this play out all the time. Someone comes across me and then they end up binge watching my videos or binge listening to my podcast. Then they might go grab my book, maybe even get several of my emails, and then they decide to enroll all within 3 to 5 days. Now, from the outside, it can look like they suddenly decided to enroll, but it wasn't sudden at all. They were actually moving through different pieces of the same story that I have intentionally designed to help them understand how I think, how I work, and why working together fits. That's the difference in 2026. The strongest marketing right now that you can be doing isn't designed around how software wants people to move. They're going to be around what humans need and how they naturally move towards a buying decision. All right, let's talk about shift number five. Now, if you watch what's happening in our industry right now, and by our industry, I mean coaching and training industry, one of the most important changes in 2026 is in how high ticket offers are actually being bought today. Right now, buyers are taking their time to decide. They're more cautious, they're more discerning. And in my opinion, there's nothing bad about that. That's actually normal. It should be that way. If you are making a high ticket decision, if you are spending 3,000, 5,000, 20,000, 30,000, you should take your time. So there's nothing bad about that. Now, what's breaking down is the old playbook of pressure based selling, manufacturer scarcity, countdown timers, bonus stacking, enroll today or lose everything you have tactics. Those tactics worked when buyers didn't have context, when information was harder to access, and when urgency could override their own agency. But in 2026, people don't want to be pushed into a decision. They don't want to be manipulated or convinced. They don't want tactics that override their own judgment. They want support that helps them make the right decision for them. So when it comes to selling high tickets, the question buyers are asking has completely changed. They're not asking, can I get a discount or how much left is on a timer? What they're asking is this solution actually a right fit for my specific situation? And are you the right person who's going to guide me to where I need to get? And do I trust that what you have to offer, your solution is actually going to work and you're going to deliver as you promised? These are the questions that close high ticket sales today. And none of them can be answered by pressuring people. People right now are taking their time, they're paying attention, they're watching how you show up across multiple touch points before they decide whether or not they want to trust to buy from you. They're listening to your podcast, they're watching your YouTube videos, they're opening up your emails, they're scanning your testimonials, they're evaluating your thinking, they're checking if your worldview matches their lived reality. So, as a result, people who win in high ticket sales today, they're not the ones who learn how to push harder or how to crush sales objections. They're the ones who understand how humans actually come to a buying decision. And for that, there are really two foundations that you need in place. The first one is understanding of human decision making, how alignment forms, how trust builds, how clarity develops. Because when you understand those things, you stop trying to force a yes, and instead you create content and experiences that help people decide whether or not this is in alignment and the right fit for them. And here's the important part to pay attention to. When someone is truly aligned, they don't need to be pressured to a yes. They arrive there on their own. And the second foundation for selling high ticket is clarity. And that clarity is your own clarity about who you are, what you bring into the table, why your solution makes sense right now in this market, in this particular time. If you can't articulate those things consistently, you leave your buyers having to figure it out all on their own. And most people won't take the time to labor over that, to do that work. But when you can articulate these things clearly and consistently, you're giving your audience something that they actually need to make a right decision for them that's based on fit, trust, and logic. And the beautiful thing about both of these foundations is that they actually compound. Understanding how people decide and being able to clearly communicate who you are, what you offer, that work doesn't expire. It doesn't get replaced by the next algorithm change or the next shiny object or the next platform. It's actually doing the opposite. Every day that you spend getting clear on these two things, your business gets stronger and stronger. So the shift in 2026 isn't just how high ticket selling has become more human. It's that the mechanism of high ticket sales is moving from pressure to qualification, from pressure to clarity, from closing to matching. And what I'm seeing is what's emerging on the other side of this shift is something that is a lot healthier than it's been for almost a decade, which is buyers who feel empowered and sellers who feel grounded, and high ticket decisions that are made based on alignment, not urgency. All right, that brings us to the last final shift, number 6, which is about authority. Showcasing your thought leadership and your authority right now is not about simply sharing good content on a consistent basis. It's built by being able to articulate something that almost everyone else in your industry is either overlooking or missing or avoiding to talk about. Now, as experts, we all have advice that we can share when it comes to the problem that our audience is experiencing or the solution that they want to reach. We all can explain the steps that they need to take to go from stuck to that desired outcome. Now, what I really want you to sit with long after this video is over is this. As we go into 2026, if you think about it, your audience right now has no shortage of access to information. In fact, they have access to more information, more advice, more how-to guides than ever before. So the question that I want you to sit with is, why is it then that so many people are still stuck? Why is it that even though the education and coaching industry has exploded since early 2010 with more program, more methods, and more access than ever before, why is it that so many people are still circling the same challenges? They've invested in programs, they've hired coaches, they've tried different approaches, and yet the core problems that they were facing almost a decade ago still remain unresolved. The experts who stand out moving forward won't just offer another solution. They'll be the ones who can clearly explain why the problem hasn't been resolved yet. If you can explain someone's situation more clearly than they can see it themselves, if you can articulate why what they've tried so far hasn't worked, if you can identify and reveal what others keep addressing, everyone in your industries keep addressing at the surface level while missing what's actually driving the bigger, deeper issue, and if your solution is meeting that deeper level problem, your voice is going to become more distinct and more differentiated. In today's market, authority isn't about being heard more. It's about making sure that when your voice is heard, it brings clarity to your audience, clarity that they recognize immediately as truth, because it explains their situation, their experience, better than anyone or anything ever has. All right, that concludes the 6 major changes that we're seeing in the coaching and expert industry. And as you can see, none of these changes are about doing more marketing. They're not about being on more platforms or creating more content or chasing whatever trend or algorithm changes. They're about becoming more intentional with how you use your presence, your content, your voice, your touch points that you're creating between you and your ideal fit clients. Because when you go deep and become intentional, rather than going wide and spreading yourself all over the place, spreading yourself thin, you're going to be less confused, less overwhelmed, and more clear. And we all know that having clarity and breathing room are the 2 biggest pieces of building a business that grows reliably and consistently.